Batman the Animated Series, one of the most influential, well-known, and beloved incarnations of the Dark Knight to date. Whether it be how it reinvented old characters to make them more three-dimensional, or how it completely came up with new characters that would make their way to almost every version of Batman to date. While it wasn't the goal all along, it also started an entire animated universe that lasted over a decade with a variety of series under its belt. So I find it kind of interesting how this series could have turned out much worse than it actually did. But that requires a bit of a history lesson, so let's get into it. Obviously, Batman himself needs no introduction since the character's been around for over 75 years. But since I've never reviewed anything that's not a video game, I thought a good place to start this review would be with a history lesson. To my understanding, Batman was originally a dark hero that we all knew and loved when he first appeared in Detective Comics number 28. There was a tonal shift when Robin was introduced, but the comics are still occasionally violent with murders being shown. Over time, Batman is viewed as a more lighthearted and campy character, mostly thanks to Adam West's portrayal of the character in the 1966 series simply titled Batman and the formation of the Comics Code Authority, pretty much censoring how comic books were made. Things changed in the 1980s when the Comics Code Authority was more lenient and graphic novels like Frank Miller's The Dark Knight Returns showed Batman as we all know him today. But in pop culture, Batman's image had changed thanks to Tim Burton's Batman film 1989, which was an attempt to take the material more seriously for the first time with a general audience. I haven't seen it in about a year and a half, but on that viewing, I can safely say that despite a few oddities, the film still holds up quite well to this day. But when it came out, it was incredibly successful, with very positive reviews and over $400,000 made at the box office. So around the time the sequel, Batman Returns, was in production, Warner Brothers wanted a cartoon series to accompany it with a similar tone to the movies. Well, the Tim Burton ones anyway. Anyway, animator Bruce Timm and writer Paul Dini, among others, had the duty of bringing this series to life. This is what I meant when I said it could have gone much worse. This could have been a kids show with the intent to sell action figures and nothing more. However, this incredibly talented team decided to deliver on a series of Emmy Award-winning material that would entertain children but also adults through subtle writing, fantastic animation that still holds up to this day, and great casting that makes every character feel real. Another thing worth mentioning would be that I'm reviewing the series season by season to keep the videos focused. So that means I'm watching them on the production order on the DVDs, which may or may not have been the airing order that the series saw. From my research, the series premiere was the first part of the two-part episode The Cat and the Claw, which on the Volume 1 DVD is the first episode to Disc 3, with an episode like Christmas with the Joker airing around the holiday season, but a second on Disc 1. That, and episodes from different volumes aired at different times, so it's pretty confusing. So like I said, I'm treating Season 1 as everything on the Volume 1 DVD, and not necessarily the airing order that 90s kids may remember. As a result, I'm going to treat the episode On Leather Wings as the pilot, since again, it's the first on the DVD, and it sure as hell feels like a pilot. So let's talk about it. One of the most iconic aspects of the animated series has got to be the intro that goes along with it. It's memorable since as opposed to other cartoons that display a clip show of the episodes or montages of things happening, Batman the Animated Series is a full-on scene as an intro, with some criminals blowing up a bank and about to get away with it before Batman steps in to take them down. Not ending with a logo or anything, no theme song like the 80s Turtles series and the 90s Spider-Man series, it just ends with Batman on a rooftop with a silhouette. Now that's an attention-grabbing intro. It kind of reminds me of the Fleischer Superman series, which was definitely an inspiration for the makers of this series, which is quite apparent through the animation. Now that brings us to On Leather Wings, the pilot episode, and I'm going to go ahead and bring this up right at the beginning. I really love the fact that the first episode of the series doesn't spend an episode with Bruce as a child with his parents getting shot and him training to become the Dark Knight. Like I said, the show is made alongside Batman 89 and Batman Returns, and the first Batman spent its running time telling the audience about the origins of both Batman and the Joker. This kind of reminds me of the Spectacular Spider-Man series, which decided to wait till the end of Season 1 with the Black Suit series to delve into the origins of Peter Parker becoming Spider-Man. Here in Batman the Animated Series, we get hints as to what his origins are in episodes like Appointment in Crime Alley or Nothing to Fear, and we'll see his training periods in episodes from Season 2, and the movie Mask of the Phantasm telling a story that ties into the first night Bruce became Batman. Am I against the first episode telling us the origin? Well, no. That's what Superman the Animated Series did, and that was an incredible first episode. Anyway, the plot of the episode actually is that there have been many bat sightings that have been attacking specific businesses, and of course the GCPD think it's Batman, and so he needs to clear his name, and all the while having to find out who's responsible for it. He finds an audio recording of the incident at the beginning of the episode, and after a chase scene with the GCPD, Bruce Wayne visits the Gotham Zoo to ask about the tape under the guise of it being a sound he heard in his chimney, with Dr. March acting pretty suspicious, but his daughter Francine and her husband Kirk Langstrom telling him they will look into it. However, the answer Bruce gets from Dr. March is a lie, and therefore the next step for Batman is to go back and investigate the zoo, but that's when Langstrom is revealed to be behind it all, as he is the Man-Bat, resulting in a fight scene that ends with the police seeing the two, and then Batman's name is cleared as he brings Langstrom back to the zoo. From there, it just kind of ends. Like seriously, that's the ending. As the pilot to the series, it was alright. The setup was fairly predictable, but it does get us introduced to many of the main characters like Batman and Alfred obviously, but also the characters of the GCPD such as Commissioner Gordon establishing his trust for Batman, but also Harvey Bullock, who's the exact opposite since he'll take any chance he gets to try and get Batman behind bars. The animation, while being the same as other episodes, doesn't look quite as good, with the voice acting and action being the exact same way. So from this point on, instead of breaking down every single episode, since that would probably get pretty old, I think now would be a good time to discuss the characters and noteworthy episodes to go along with them. Starting with the Dark Knight himself, here he's pretty much how you'd expect him to be, since the personality of Batman rarely changes in between versions. Here he's the same dedicated crime fighter that will stop at nothing to make sure that criminals are put behind bars like in any other version, but he just feels like a human being though, since he's got real friendships and relations, like how in Appointment in Crime Alley, we find out that Bruce had a childhood therapist that he still sees now who knows that he's Batman. Or how in the two-part episode Two-Face, or Pretty Poison, we see how Bruce is best friends with Harvey Dent before he became Two-Face. With one of the best examples being Beware of the Grey Ghost, which shows where Bruce got many of his inspirations from. As a kid, he loved the series about the Grey Ghost and now crimes being committed that are identical to an episode of the series, with Batman coming face to face with the man who played the character.
Here's your answer. Take it and go. Please!
I used to admire what the Grey Ghost stood for.
I'm not the Grey Ghost.
I can see that now.
I love how he's played by Adam West, which of all the Adam West cameos in Batman material, I must say this one is by far the most meaningful and well written, as a kind of passing of the torch episode. I like how this version of Batman embodies everything we know him for now, since not only is this Batman incredibly smart, a master martial artist, but we also see several scenes of him actually doing detective work. Many incarnations tend to focus on the fighting primarily or the crazy gadgets he uses. While other versions do definitely have all these aspects, none of them have as much of a balance as the animated series. In this season at the very least, I haven't seen the next 3 seasons of Batman the Animated Series in a few years. Bruce was voiced by Kevin Conroy, who's easily the one actor to have played Batman for the longest period of time across several different incarnations, such as here in the DCAU, the Arkham series, many of the straight-to-DVD DC Comics movies, along with multiple cartoons, and for good reason, since this is a pretty definitive voice for the character, since he perfectly distinguishes the difference in attitude for both Bruce Wayne and Batman without going too far over the top. Although, since this is just how acting as one character for a while works, Kevin Conroy's Batman voice in this season sounds kinda different from the way he reads Batman lines now. He started doing things a bit differently once we got to the new Batman Adventures, or Season 4, since the way his character was written was also different, but I'll get back to that when we get to that. In terms of other recurring characters, there isn't too much to say since they aren't particularly three-dimensional, but that is fine since they're there to enhance Batman's character, such as Alfred, who as always is the loyal butler to Bruce, but one thing that's worth mentioning is that Alfred got recast a few episodes in. In On Leather Wings, Christmas with the Joker, and Nothing to Fear, Alfred was voiced by Clive Revill, who dubbed Emperor Palpatine in the original version of The Empire Strikes Back, with that being replaced by Ian McDermott in the special edition, but that's neither here nor there. He had some prior acting commitments, so he couldn't be Alfred. So they got Ephraim Zimbalist Jr., who would continue to play the character for the remainder of the season and the other seasons of Batman the Animated Series, as well as any other cameos Alfred had in Superman the Animated Series and Justice League. While he isn't really all that important and therefore doesn't speak too much, I much prefer his take on Alfred. Robin's also part of the animated series, and he only gets about 2 prominent appearances in the first season, those being Christmas with the Joker and Fear of Victory. He's voiced by Lauren Lester, who does a really good job, and I really like the fact that they decided to make Robin a college kid in this show. He became Robin years prior, obviously, but we only see him now so we don't have to deal with cringeworthy child acting. Although that doesn't stop Robin from having the occasional cringeworthy line.
They don't call you Batman for nothing.
Again, the GCPD members are also not the most well-developed, but like I said in the pilot episode, we do get to know their perspectives well, and they're all well acted. With a good choice being how one of the episodes, POV, is all about the GCPD members like Renee Montoya, Harvey Bullock, and a new recruit arguing about what happened at a crime scene they failed to stop. It gives us a chance to see these characters interact in an environment without Batman, despite him being a big part of all their individual stories. But with that out of the way, we can get to Batman's Gallery of Rogues, which as many people have pointed out are probably the best roster of villains any comic book character has ever had. Starting with the most obvious, the Joker, whom as everyone knows is played by Mark Hamill, who besides the Joker is mostly known for being Luke Skywalker in the Star Wars trilogy. There's most certainly a reason as to why he's the one actor who has played the Joker so many times in various versions, since both the writing of the character and the performance brilliantly capture all aspects of the Joker. Similar to Batman, other versions capture some of the Joker's traits. Like in one version he may be all about comedy, the next a total murdering psychopath, and so on. This Joker pulls the wacky stunts for a good laugh, like how in Christmas with the Joker, the whole episode's a setup for the fact that Joker wants to throw a pie in Batman's face. But on the other hand, we still see that he's out to kill people, but since this is a cartoon, he never actually succeeds in doing it. Like the episode Be a Clown, where Joker gets badmouthed by the mayor, and so he infiltrates the mayor's son's birthday party and turns the cake into a bomb that was absolutely intended to blow everyone to a million pieces.
So long, Mayor. Gotta go. But I left them with a bang.
He's also pretty manipulative while being comical at the same time. Take the Joker's favor, for example, where this guy talks shit to him on the road for cutting him off, to which the Joker demands a favor, which is redeemed 2 years later.
Wait! You promised to send me home! I never said alive.
He has such a whimsical attitude while saying and doing so many terrible things. My main point being that as a result, you fully buy it when he's doing something to be comedic, and yet at the same time it's not out of character for him to torture and transform Tim Drake's Robin into Joker Jr. How he managed that, well, that would be diving into Batman Beyond and Justice League Unlimited territory, so I'll save it for later. In the Joker's favor, we get introduced to a brand new Batman character, that being the Joker's #1 lackey, Harley Quinn. In this season, she only made one appearance, and it was the one episode I just listed. Her only role was to drag the cake bomb into the party. However, her character's really good design and good performance by Arlene Sorkin really caught on. So for future incarnations, it's rare to see a version of Batman that doesn't have Harley alongside the Joker. Even then, she's such a staple of the series that she even had her own comic series. However, like I said, there's not much to say about Harley here in the first season since she only makes one appearance. Many of the absolute best episodes of the season are the ones that establish Batman's villains. The general formula for those episodes is that there's a costume villain Batman has to stop, but we find out that said costume villain has a twisted backstory that involves some businessman doing something to wreck their lives. Sometimes it's for really tragic reasons, and other times it's kind of meh. Like in Nothing to Fear, I'm not sure if we're supposed to be rooting against the guy in a suit that stopped Jonathan Crane from using his fear experiments on college kids. He didn't seem to be in the wrong there. Also, I like how Batman defeats Scarecrow in the same way he also does in Batman Begins, but that's neither here nor there. Also, I'm just going to mention this since I don't see a better opportunity. Before we ever got close to the new Batman adventures, Scarecrow also got a redesign in this season. In his debut, Nothing to Fear, he kind of looks like a sock puppet. I don't know, it's just not really a good design. In his second episode, Fear of Victory, he looks like an actual Scarecrow, and I think it's incredibly good. Although I prefer his design in the new Batman adventures the most, but we'll get back to that later. One of the best episodes of the series has got to be the two-parter Two-Face, where we see Harvey Dent go from the soon-to-be re-elected DA into the villain we know today. Since he had split personality disorder and had a tendency to switch from his normal self to an angrier side, I like the fact that him getting half of his face burned is not the reason that he has this issue. It's just that the face thing is the physical manifestation of his split personality. I love these episodes for the same reason as everyone else, but I do have some gripes with it. 1. People usually say that Dent was an established character before this, which I guess is true, but really he made a 2-second cameo in On Other Wings, and while he had a much bigger role in Pretty Poison, he really was just a plot device, so that Batman could go after Poison Ivy. So I'd say this is his first big role. Much bigger issue for me is that the relationship between him and his new fiancée, Grace, is not really well built up to at all, since we saw in Pretty Poison that he's been dating other people, and so this is a bit too sudden for my taste. They made the best out of it though, since it doesn't take away from the viewing experience, it's just some issues I have with it. Far less effective would be the 2-part episode Feet of Clay, which introduced Clayface. The first part of this episode is pretty boring since most of the runtime is just set up for part 2 where the interesting things actually happen. Again, it's the same businessman ruin me formula that Two-Face and the next character works so well, but here it's just kinda dull with Clayface dying at the end but not dying and getting away. Anyway, not a bad episode, but pretty hit or miss. But easily the best episode of the entire season, bar none, Heart of Ice. Need I say more? This episode was obviously about Mr. Freeze, and before this, his character had just been a thug with an ice gun. Here, they completely redefined him. You've probably heard the story at some point. Freeze is a scientist trying to cure his wife of a disease and gets frozen by a man in a business suit, turning him into the monster he is now. That tragic backstory made its debut here in the animated series.
Yes, it would move me to tears if I still had tears to shed.
This episode does everything right. The acting is on point since you can feel the emotion in every character's voice with great plot twists all throughout. The animation on Freeze's suit is also fantastic, with the glass being the most detailed and best part. It feels like a hollow victory when Batman beats Freeze in the end, since was he really in the wrong for trying to get revenge on the guy that ruined his life and almost killed his wife? I don't really know, but my absolute favorite part has got to be the ending.
I failed you. I wish there were another way for me to say it. But I cannot. I can only beg your forgiveness and pray you'll hear me somehow. Someplace where a warm hand waits for mine.
Now, not all of Batman's costume villains are the best episodes, though. The Penguin's sole episode, I've Got Batman in My Basement, is probably one of the worst in the season. The plot is that after taking an injury in a fight with the Penguin, Batman gets rescued by some kids and he's in their basement. Does that sound cringeworthy and stupid to you? Well, it is. Also, it's really boring, with the typical bully kids coming over to mess with the Batmobile, and what a lame story. Is this really the best introduction for the Penguin the show could muster? Also, the two-part episode, The Cat and the Claw, was pretty weak in my opinion. It does serve as a pretty good introduction to Catwoman's character, but since the plot in part 2 becomes all about Red Claw and not Catwoman, it's kind of dull at the end. With that said, some of my favorite episodes of the series are actually the ones not about any costume villains at all, such as The Underdwellers, which is all about this psycho who captures children who were abandoned and makes them do slave labor for him, in addition to stealing goods for him. Batman representing the audience here makes the defeat of this guy all the more satisfying. It's a fairly simple plot, but it still leaves an impact regardless. And I can't actually believe they got away with this on children's TV in the 90s. But another one of the best episodes, See No Evil, which involves a man using an invisibility suit to see his daughter since the mother of the kid wants nothing to do with him since he's a criminal. What makes it one of my favorites is just how personally Batman takes this. This and the last episode I mentioned established, without having to say it, that Batman finds manipulating and capturing children to be a severe case to take on, which it is, and that makes him defeating these terrible people all the more satisfying.
Why? Why? Why?
I don't pass sentence. That's for the courts. But this time, I am sorely tempted to do the job myself.
On the other side of that coin, the episode I enjoyed the absolute least is Prophecy of Doom, where this guy is a fake magician, I guess, and when he's exposed he wants to kill these people. Yeah, that's about it. It really is a drag with a very predictable climax, and the problem being, like I said, that the journey there was not interesting at all. So that's all the episodes I wanted to talk about, and with that said, I think now is a good time to address the animation. As I've said, it looks really good, one of my favorite aspects being how there's next to no CGI used, which would have artificially dated the series by quite a bit. The visual design of Gotham is incredible, since it has a very timeless feel, since the buildings and mobsters all have a very early 20th century vibe with how the cars and weapons look. But at the same time, Batman has the Batmobile and his advanced technology, since early on in the series, Batman's computer is evidently an AI, although they kinda dropped that later on, and for good reason, since it's kinda dumb. This series is a testament to the fact that you can do so many things in animation that can't be done in live action, like the part in Two-Face where the lightning strikes, and you can see foreshadowing of what it'll look like later. On the other hand, the action is less than amazing. Most of the time it feels incredibly slow, and therefore doesn't feel all that satisfying to watch, since it doesn't feel like we're watching a master ninja at work. So with that said and done, that covers the first season of Batman the Animated Series. What more can I say? Well, I really enjoyed rewatching this. I got this DVD set back in 2012 and watched every episode back in 2013, and I haven't gone back to them since. As someone who grew up watching Justice League and Justice League Unlimited, and as a result didn't grow up in the 90s to see this when it was on, I'm happy to say that this more than holds up to the high standards I have for the DCAU thanks to Justice League. So in other words, Batman the Animated Series holds up quite well, and I'd even recommend you check it out now despite it being 25 years old. Not every episode's a hit, but the high points are so well done I really don't mind. So with that all said and done, what did you guys think of this new formula? If you enjoyed it, I do want to review the remaining seasons of the show and other shows in the DCAU, as well as cover other movies and TV shows. But next up, I have a certain series I need to end. You all know the one. Next time, I'm reviewing Sly 3: Honor Among Thieves. Thank you all for watching, and I'll see you next time.